fam.news.
It's definitely one of the biggest stories of 2023, and that story is only going to unfold in 2024. We are diving deep into the merger between Mattress Firm and TSI. How will this affect other mattress retailers? How will it affect the industry? And what's the impact on consumers? We tackle these burning questions and more with industry expert Brandon Hufstetler. The FAM podcast begins right now. Hey, are you a mattress retailer looking to supercharge your business? Introducing Podium, your secret weapon. I use it, I'm a huge fan of it, and with Podium's AI-powered lead conversion, you can engage with customers in seconds via text, making it feel like they're talking to a friend. But hey, that's just the beginning. Podium offers texting, payments, reviews, website chat, and more, all in one place. You've got to be the most responsive retailer to help customers solve those sleep problems in the moment. Harness the power of Podium today and start growing your business. Visit podium.com right now to learn more.
Welcome to the FAM podcast with Mark Kinsley. This is where the best in the bedding business get even better.
Welcome to the FAM podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kinsley. So excited to have Brandon Hufstetler on the show today. Brandon, you are the principal and CEO of Autonomous Retail Technology and a 16-year veteran of the Tempur Sealy organization. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show today, because I know you've been talking to investors, you've been talking to the mattress community about this merger. And as retailers start their journey into 2024, as the industry starts its journey into 2024, I know a lot of people are asking these questions about what's the motivation behind the TSI Mattress Firm merger, and how's it going to impact the industry? We're getting into that today. First of all, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. What do they say on radio? What's the cliche? Long-time listener, first-time caller?
Yeah.
I'm listening to your show for a while. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great to have you on the show. Of course, we met through the events that we put together with the FAM and Sleep Summit and the Mattress Mentorship Mastermind group we're all a part of. And I've gotten to know you a little bit. It's been really fascinating to see and understand your perspective, having been somebody that's worked in this organization. Just to set the stage a little bit, what was your experience at TSI? I know you had three kind of central roles.
Sure. So over the course of 16, 17 years while I was there, it was a fascinating experience. Is just the evolution of the industry and the organization. The first third of that was really on the business side, and really got to work with thousands of retailers and understanding their business and their pressure points and pain points and understanding the customer journey. So I was really grateful for that experience. And then I transitioned into more of a strategic role as the two organizations, Tempur-Pedic acquired Sealy, and then bringing those two organizations together to find synergies and optimize or improve or make processes more efficient and ultimately systems more efficient, understand the industry, some industry insights and what are the competitors doing, just from a strategic perspective. How do you build business as those two organizations were coming together seamlessly? And then in the last third of my time at Tempur Sealy was really spent in digital transformation and technology. And so how can we take some of this data and this information that we had uncovered and then make it more purposeful, bring it together, aggregate it, curate it, whatever you want to say, and then make it more useful to make business decisions, then also get that information into the hands of our retail partners so they could make better business decisions and understand the customer and this evolution of the customer journey, especially post-COVID, where it was really meaningful to understand that customer at a whole nother granularity and level. So with that, there's those three components, from business to data, call it, to technology. That's where I really understood there was a gap in the industry, and this industry really needed an accelerant to help move it forward in that technological capacity. And so I left, after conversations with the family and everything else, left Tempur Sealy to start Autonomous Retail Technology, where we do a couple of things. We have a B2B side of the business, which really helps retailers, suppliers, manufacturers accelerate their technological capabilities. But then we also have Sleepology, which is a retail channel that serves end consumers looking to discover their best sleep through mattresses and other sleep accessories. We kind of use that entity as a lab of sorts to better understand those customers, to develop technologies on the B2B side, test those within our own environments, and then so we can better serve our customers on the B2B side. So a lot going on there between the B2B and then the retail channel, but really think that there's an opportunity for the industry to, who's traditionally been antiquated from a technological perspective, to accelerate that forward.
And you and I have talked a lot about this, and I want to kind of put a pin in it and come back and do another podcast episode dedicated to AI, generative AI, and get into some of the weeds of how you and I are using it in our own businesses and how you're helping retailers, suppliers, manufacturers, because that is this whole huge conversation. And actually, I was quoted in some other media sources about what are the biggest changes to business, and my umbrella statement was around generative AI and what it can do in businesses, everything from social media and marketing to customer service to analytics to finance. It's just an amazing time to be alive when, if you feed and plumb these things the right way, you all of a sudden can ask a question through a simple dashboard and get an answer. Whether it's, hey, how are our sales this month compared to last year? Or what ads are performing well on our Google display network and what's doing better on Facebook. I mean, it's just the possibilities are endless. And I think it's been really cool to talk to you, because you're helping people see the possibilities, because we don't know what we don't know. And once you start digging in there and realizing how much can be automated, it's a magical world that is starting to reveal itself.
Absolutely. There's as much change on the technology side as I think will become changes, as this Tempur Sealy and Mattress Firm deal, which everybody expects it to go through. So it's a time for change for our industry, for sure.
Well, and when you look at the landscape of that change presents opportunity. And, you got a big organization that's potentially becoming bigger with TSI Mat Firm, and that becomes a ship that can be difficult to turn. And so I know retailers are asking me, of all different sizes, how is this going to impact us? Before we get to the impact on retailers, I know you've spoken with the investment community quite a bit. What is the motivation behind the TSI Mattress Firm merger?
So I think there's a lot of synergies there between the organizations. I think they can better serve the customers. And ultimately, I'll probably talk about a few of these in this podcast, of some opportunities for even third-party retailers through this merger. But with that also comes some, potentially some side effects as well. But I think there's just the amount of synergies between those two organizations is vast. And the way so if you bring it all back to money, I think Tempur Sealy had, from a wholesale perspective, they had about 40% market share pre-deal. That only goes to like 47, 48% market share post-deal based on their, what I estimate their current share of voice within Mattress Firm is. That's from a wholesale perspective. But if you look at from a holistic view of omni-channel and say, okay, well, let's include wholesale dollars plus retail dollars, well, that's where the big change comes. And that's where Tempur Sealy pre-deal has about 12% of the total pie, wholesale and retail, and that grows to about 27%. And I think that's really what, like the FTC and some other organizations are really looking at, is how does that impact the entirety from manufacturing all the way through the consumable side of that mattress or those products.
And of course, the FTC is looking at it from a consumer perspective, and they're looking at it from a potential monopolistic perspective. But it seems like all signals right now are that the deal is going to go through. If you're a retailer that has a store or stores, it could be 50 stores or 5, and Mattress Firm is across the street, and Mattress Firm carries, let's call it, Tempur-Pedic, and you carry Tempur-Pedic, how are you thinking about your business, and how are you thinking about your merchandising at this point?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, that retailer, we'll just use that retailer as an example. Don't make an emotional decision. Like, don't go out and change, things overnight. Wait and see how it impacts your business. Because one of the, I'm going back several years ago, decades now ago, I guess, but other brands are stronger on the floor when Tempur-Sealy's on the floor. There's a trust factor with customers. Tempur-Pedic product in particular is an aspirational brand that customers come in asking for. So you'd almost to make an emotional reaction right now, I think would not be the best decision for your business, because it doesn't hurt you to wait and see how that impacts. And we all know that all boats rise in a tide. And if you're out there saying that one message is, you should do this, and somebody else's, mattress firm or somebody else is saying you should do that, to consumers, that's noise. So I think you just wait and see. It does no harm to wait and see, how things play out. I do think that retailer needs to definitely have accurate store traffic counts so they can monitor changes over time. They need to track accurately their conversion as well as their average ticket, because those three factors will play a big role in deciding or determining if you want to take an action to add more Tempur-C products or break up your floor a little bit.
Let's add another layer of nuance here. Let's say that somebody says, yep, I agree with Brandon. That's kind of the position we're taking right now, is a wait and see attitude. But 2 months down the road from now, I have to renegotiate my TSI contract. And let's say TSI has the majority of my floor locked up. How would you be thinking about those contract negotiations?
I would put them off. Honestly, I would put them off. There's no harm in, I mean, there's been several deals that have been done where it's just done on a handshake. And if there's nothing on paper. Now, if you, I'm probably at a unique position here and probably outvoted on both the retail side and the wholesale side in saying this, but if you just do a handshake deal and just say, what, if we can choose to walk away or you can choose to walk away, I guess my underlying point there is I would delay it as long as I could personally, just to wait and see. Because once you're locked in, I mean, you're kind of locked in. The flexibility more so than anything, you just don't have that flexibility to make those decisions, or some of the decisions that you might want to make down the road as things evolve. But you know what, I think Mattress Max says this best, and I don't remember where I heard this, but he said, if you focus on the customer, something along, I'm going to butcher this, so I apologize, Mac, but if you focus on the customer, everything else seems to fall into place. So I think you just focus on your customers and everything else seems to work itself out.
I've even seen some retailers, and I totally agree with that. And when you think about focusing on the customer, one of the things that I talk a lot with our dealers about is, absent of value, people make a decision on price. So you need to build value in everything you do. And if you're looking at your merchandising strategy this year and thinking about making moves or thinking about sticking with your TSI product, whatever it is, as a retailer, I think you need to build value in that. And one way that I've seen retailers do a really good job of that is highlighting and documenting and sharing what they're doing at markets, what they're doing when they go on factory visits, so that people in your marketplaces understand we're going out here as curators to get a better understanding and to ensure we're bringing in products with the finest materials. And that sends really good signals to customers. So definitely build value in whatever it is you're doing. And, I think that's a piece of this conversation is Tempur-Pedic has done such an incredible job over the years of building value in their products that it has become an aspirational purchase. And it's the one I say that people will not be denied the opportunity to try a Tempur-Pedic if they're in the market for a mattress. And so it's still the most relevant brand. And like you said, wait and see might be the way to go, because taking it off your floor, if somebody has it across the street, has typically been detrimental to businesses from what I've seen and heard.
Yeah. You made a great point about the just creating content in the moment, because retailers and even manufacturers put so many resources into training their staffs or into improving a process, into doing some of these learning. about products and some of these other things. And it's so inexpensive to carry around, a camera these days to document that stuff that I mean, and it's probably something I should do better. You kind of a reminder for myself here, but just to document some of that stuff. And it's so easy and it's free to share kind of those experiences and to build that value around your brand, the retailer's brand, in combination with, some of the manufacturer's brands, and just show, here's why we chose to carry this product. And here's why we believe that you should purchase from us. I shared a short story with you. Mancini just reminded me of this. Mancini, a lot of their stores are right outside of Costco stores. And so you're never going to beat Costco on price, right? From a Sealy perspective, this is back when they only carried Sealy products. You're never going to beat Costco. But Mancini's, one of the first things they implemented into their greeting was, man, I tell you why I chose to work here. And just building that value in their brand and why the customer made a great choice to become their guest for that moment, I think goes a long way. And customers are willing to pay for that.
And always remember, I love that story about Mancini's. And always remember, too, that the customer is the hero of their own story, and you're the guide. And I love saying, can I tell you why I chose to work here? Because then you're able to position yourself as that guide, that trusted resource to help them navigate what can be a confusing purchase. So even when you're creating content or welcoming a guest into your showroom, remember they're the hero of the story, and making it about them is what's going to be most meaningful. Instead of, thumping your chest and saying we're great because of all these reasons, it's you're going to feel great because of all these things we've done to help you in this purchase process.
Absolutely. Yep. You're their guide. You're not there to solve their problem. You're there to help them solve their own problem. And by providing them with a plan, right? And then enabling them and empowering them to go out and execute that plan.
Speaking of executing plans, we're seeing this plan unfold with Mattress Firm and TSI potentially merging. And as I talked to people behind the scenes, one of the concerns I had was around category awareness. So whenever Mattress Firm has historically come into a market, they spent a bunch of money, and that money elevated category awareness. And what happened? The other retailers benefited. Their business went up because more people in that DMA were thinking about mattresses. So you have the two biggest spenders in the category. So you could throw a Sleep Number in there, but let's just say TSI and Mattress Firm are the big spenders in the category. If they dialed back that spend in certain markets, and I've heard there's going to be a shedding of store count. I heard the number 500 Mattress Firm stores might go away. Well, that's 500 potential areas where money was being spent and consumers were thinking about mattresses, and the overall category was benefiting from that. What's your take on what could happen with that spend and the category elevation versus decline?
It's probably one of my areas of greatest concern just for the overall health of the category. If you think about, like, if I'm sitting in a Tempur Sealy or Mattress Firm position and post-merger, you're looking at your ad dollars and how do we most maximize these to produce sales, right? What's going to be our greatest return on that investment, that marketing or advertising investment? I find it hard to believe there wouldn't be some shifts or some changes. I could see Mattress Firm advertising be less top funnel and more transactional. And I could see, some Tempur Sealy's has always been top funnel, and they would feed it out to retailers who'd spend their co-op or whatever you have, or their marketing dollars to then go out and do more lower funnel activities. So if that shifts and you take some of that those Mattress Firm, what were used as top funnel, and you shift them down to bottom funnel, which we can all agree, like most of that's digital advertising, which gets very specific and very hyper-targeted and expensive, but is hyper-targeted. It's less broader impressions, less awareness, just general category awareness. So there's going to be less on general category awareness, I think, overall, which is which is a little alarming for me. And then you throw in the store counts. They've heard 500 stores. I think they recently announced they're going to maybe potentially 200 for sale, or 300, or whatever the number is. And, are those all together, or are those spread out across the country? Like, just, who knows what that's going to look like, as well as they try to, make the FTC a little bit more comfortable with this deal. But I do think that, from a retailer perspective, that is a concern. So if you're thinking from a marketing perspective, and if I'm rambling a little bit here, but if I'm a third party retailer too that competes, let's say, across the store from a mattress firm, it's not necessarily your responsibility to carry the top funnel awareness weight, right? So then do you then start to go bottom funnel strategy as well, and which would could potentially cause even more of I would say collapse, but it's not going to be a full out collapse, but just does it become really lopsided to bottom funnel awareness? And that's probably my biggest concern.
That's a great point. I mean, you think about, and for those maybe not familiar with the term top of funnel, bottom of funnel, I think a lot of people are, but you're talking about just like general awareness type messaging, TV, radio, even a little bit of print, a little bit of digital here and there, YouTube pre-rolls, whatever it might be. It's like that awareness piece about your brand's name, and hey, mattresses comes up over and over again, versus the bottom of the funnel being like somebody typed into Google mattress store near me. That's the type of terminology or the landscape you're going to be competing on. And like you said, the deeper pockets are probably going to win. And if you're competing against the bigger brands as maybe a regional or smaller brand, you're going to have to figure out some differentiation at that bottom of funnel, like moment of truth, when a consumer is clearly in the market for a mattress. That could get very expensive and much more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you layer on, if you look back at the category and you look outside of some complementary categories, like 7 years ago, sleep was a big topic for the pharmaceutical industry, and everybody was pushing these sleep commercials, Balsama and some of these other things. That only helped our category because that made the general consumer hyper aware about their sleep, and are they getting enough sleep, and so on and so forth. So and then you had some of these sleep trackers that helped sprinkle on some additional awareness, but those have kind of died off as well. So it's really kind of gone back to the days where the category has to sustain itself and drive its own self-awareness, because there are fewer and fewer complementary industries out there that are going to help us.
Let's take a little shift here about another point that I've had a little bit of concern about. I've had a few conversations about. Mike Magnuson with goodbed.com did a really good job of kind of breaking down this math. And for simplicity's sake, it's all around map pricing. And what happens if map pricing increases? Typically if a map price product goes up in price, the volume declines a little bit, or depending on, it can go a bunch of different ways. Sure. How would you be thinking about those dynamics in map pricing? Because again, for simplicity's sake, TSI is now participating in all of that revenue stream, everything from the retail sale down to the wholesale, and in some cases the componentry. Well, you as a retailer are only participating in the profit from the sale of that wholesale good to a retail consumer. And so if the prices goes up and your demand goes down as a retailer, and then the price goes up and the demand goes down a little bit as a mattress firm of the world, they don't take a big hit. How would you be thinking about how map pricing could impact your business?
This is one where it could go one of two ways, I think. There may be a third way in here somewhere, but one of two ways. It could be that Tempur Sealy, realizes some of these synergies, and as new costs, as they incur new costs through, let's say, raw material inflation, whatever, demand, supply, whatever it may be, as they incur these new costs, they could absorb those much easier because a larger portion of their business is, internal. I could call it internal, both retail and wholesale, direct channel. Or if they pass those along, it could be, kind of a bigger burden on the third-party retailers, and which would continue to grow the gap. I mean, just with the inflation alone, I think on average, during post-COVID, there was like six average price increases on average per vendor, and the average price of mattresses went up something like 37%, something crazy. Just that alone created this massive barbell effect of sorts in the industry. If you think through the price, the spectrum across the price bands, so it definitely plays a factor. I don't have a solid answer for you, but I think it could go one of two ways. They could absorb costs a little easier, or they could pass those along as they incur them, and which could potentially put a bigger burden on third-party retailers. This is definitely something to watch.
I know this is more asking Brandon to have a crystal ball, but if you had to make a guess, do you think Tempur-Pedic in particular is going to create unique product for Mattress Firm and have different product for what you call third-party retailers, non-Mattress Firm retailers?
It's definitely an option. I see that as a benefit to third-party retailers. If that were to occur, I can definitely see it being a topic of discussion and an option on the table as you help protect third-party retailers in their marketplaces. So I think it bodes well for third-party retailers as you think through the customer review and aggregation or curation of customer reviews and things like that. That having everybody under one brand name definitely helps from that perspective. But then you also have the flexibility of, Mattress Firm having their own unique products that you don't have to compete directly with. So I see it being an option on the table. I could definitely see it being probably outside of Tempur-Pedic products. I could see it, call it Stearns and Foster or Sealy, or even obviously private label. I could see those being different.
As we move into this new era, let's call it, of TSA and Mattress Firm being merged, give us your hot takes on, you've got 10 retail stores, 50 retail stores, and all of them are across the street from Mattress Firm. How are you thinking about what you need to get right and what you need to do to be most competitive?
I think everybody out there needs to have a hard look at their USP or unique selling proposition. If they've stood on, I'm just throwing this out there, like family owned, or if they've stood on greatest selection, or if they stood on whatever they've stood on for so long, they need to really reevaluate that and see, is this going to be a strong enough unique selling proposition going forward? Does it still resonate with customers? Because you've got to be able to speak extremely clear and direct with customers so that your message breaks through a lot of, I would call it noise, but a lot of competitive noise, if you're surrounded by some of these other retailers. And that goes whether or not it's a Mattress Firm or it's anybody out there around you. You really need to take a look at your own brand. How can you simplify that message, fine tune or hone your USP so that it resonates with customers? And because customers have evolved over time, and it may be a good time for everybody to look at some of those.
I couldn't agree more with that. I've mentioned this on the show before, but there's a really great book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries and Jack Trout. And in that book, they talk about your unique selling proposition in terms of owning a category. And you have to be first or the world's biggest or best in order to own a category. And the way that you do that, the little story they told that I thought was really great is, who was the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Well, it was Charles Lindbergh. The guy that did it next did it better, faster by every metric. Less fuel consumption, every single metric he was better. And nobody knows who he is. There was not a third person to fly across the Atlantic, because the third person to fly across the Atlantic created a new category. There was only the first woman, Amelia Earhart. So instead of being third at something, create a category in which you can be first. And people tend to think categorically in their minds, and that's why they call that white tissue a Kleenex. That's why they call that sticky thing that keeps the blood from coming out a Band-Aid. because they're using the brand name as the category. And so as you look at your unique selling proposition, think, how can I be the world's first or the world's only? If you're a jewelry store and you got all the selection and all the jewelry and all the different things, don't come out as a jewelry store. Come out as, we're the first and biggest engagement ring store. People always get married, right? You can have the other stuff, but think about that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're, you stare out at a mattress firm, you say they're the number one Tempur-Pedic retailer. I don't know what they use, but like, I look at that as, is that a self kind of a beating of their own chest? So look at things through the consumer's lens too, and say, is that really meaningful to a customer? The world's largest. I mean, to me personally, this is just personally speaking, I don't think that for a customer resonates as much as, to your point, make it about them, engagement or experience, or make it about their needs, not necessarily about what you've accomplished, not about what the retailer's accomplished. So it's kind of, you kind of have to find these like little niches, and they're not easy. They kind of come to you at 2 or 3 in the morning, right? They're not easy to find, but when you find them, just kind of see if there's a story there and evolve that story, and then do some testing with customers to see if it resonates.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great kind of clarification of, like, find the category. And then when you develop your unique selling proposition, it should be meaningful to the consumer, to the people you're trying to serve. One little exercise you can do that can be very revealing is, let's say that you had to give away mattresses for free. That you had to give them away for free. The only thing you could charge for was everything else. Could you create an experience that was so meaningful, so magical, so beneficial to consumers that they would pay for it? And if you had to do it that way, what would that experience look like? And that sometimes can surface the way to think about your business and your USP.
Absolutely. That'd be a great little exercise.
Well, the other thing, of course, if you want to compete, is you got to be thinking about AI. So you got to have yourself some autonomous retail technology, right?
Well, you know what? That's a great point. In that, I'm going to say back in the day, 2 decades ago, a decade ago, 15 years ago, whatever, you could get by as a retailer in just doing traditional run your weekly ads, ROP. You could get by with that. And then you had to have an e-com site, right? Things got digital. Then you had to have social. Then you had to have now digital. And even within digital, there are like 7 or so different channel or different avenues within digital, types of ads and things like that. And then you got different platforms. It's only gotten extremely, extremely complicated as we add all this technical stuff in here. And it's not easy to learn. And so, from an AI perspective or automation perspective, that's definitely an area of the business that I think that retailers should explore, so they don't drain their resources, their human resources, in doing some of these tasks that in my opinion could and should be automated, especially leveraging some of the strengths of the AI and LLMs that we've talked about.
And I know we're going to come back and have a separate podcast where we dig into some of this stuff, but it really is a huge competitive advantage if you can develop systems and processes that just tap into what generative AI is able to do. And it goes way beyond marketing and content creation, I have to say. And I love it when we can start looking at a business and thinking, how do I remove human error as well? We were talking about your unique selling proposition. Well, think about the execution of that as well. Think about, if you're using Podium, for example, and your team is texting, you can use some brand voice and some automated generated text messages that are on brand for your company, as opposed to somebody who's maybe not the best communicator or tends to say the wrong thing in the wrong way. Well, that impacts that unique selling proposition and your brand, because all of those touch points pay off your brand. And if they are random and it's everybody's playing jazz all the time, that can have a negative impact on your business.
It's the phone game, right? It's the old classic phone game where you start with one person in the room, and by the time it gets to the other end, the original message has been completely misconstrued and twisted and everything else. And so, yeah, so to be able to have that, it's been trained on your brand and speak specifically directly to your brand in an efficient manner is I think it's a big opportunity or a big win.
And if you think about it, we're talking about the competitive landscape. And if you're a retailer, maybe competing against larger retailers, some of those efficiencies that you can introduce through AI are going to be a competitive advantage. We're talking pretty much about product and merger and TSI and Mat Firm and all those different things. Well, if you're a speedboat, you can turn a lot quicker than if you're a barge, moving down the canal, So be thinking about what those things that you might need to explore, even beyond the product side of things, to give yourself that competitive advantage. And of course, hey, reach out to our friend Brandon, autonomousretailtechnology.com. And Brandon, thank you for breaking this down for us, because I know it is a burning question that people have as they go into 2024 and beyond. And I think you gave us some really good kind of like stabilizing, let's call it advice, along with some stuff that helps us think more strategically about our business. So thanks for coming in and breaking it down and helping us understand this a little bit better.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark. Thank you.